Hey guys, so I want to do a video. This video might ruffle a few feathers and stuff, but I feel like it's not very talked about really, and I think I have some helpful insight into the subject. And the subject is the pros and cons of leaving your coach and trying to get a new one. So, we'll start off with the pros. And before we even get into any of that, I just want to say this video isn't saying leave your coach or stay with your coach. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. I don't know your coach. All right. So this is strictly just considering everything. And this mainly pertains to college and pro, I guess high school maybe, but um because like college and pro, like you can leave your coaches and stuff, and high school unless you like switch high schools or your coach gets fired or quits or something or retires, chances are you're going to have that coach no matter what unless you get a private coach. But this is mainly for college and pro level, where you can pick and choose your coaches, willing that you get into the school or the coach wants to coach you. um, but yeah, so this video is not designed or intended in any way to say, oh, leave your coach, they suck. Because again, I don't know your coach. I don't know you. I don't know your situation. I'm sorry about my neighbors. They just had like kids and and there's like roosters and stuff behind. I'm really sorry if I don't know what's going on over there. I do apologize for that. You might hear some weird noises just off in the distance. I hope my camera doesn't pick it up or anything, but yeah. So, anyway, onto the subject. The pros. So, the pros of let's start with the pros and negatives of staying with your coach, and then we'll go to the pros and negatives of leaving your coach. Okay, so the pros of staying with your coach, consistency. Now, speaking from personal experience, I me I would have benefited a lot from having a consistent coach throughout college, because I had my best years in high school when I just had one coach, and then post collegiate and like my last year of college when I had one coach. All right, so I had 4 years of one coach, 3 years of one coach, and those were the best years. But in between that, I had a coach every 2 years. So my freshman, sophomore year, I had one coach. Sophomore, junior year, I had one coach. I had a different coach, and that really messed me up. And you see this, not to make this video just about me, but I feel like I have a unique perspective because a lot of, well, actually, a lot of D1 people probably have this same situation, but it's really hard because every coach has their different viewpoints on the throw, the lifting, everything. They're just their different viewpoints on just everything. So if you don't have one consistent coach, and you just have like a coach like every 2 years or every other year, you'll never develop a consistent technique. And I think for me at least, that really hindered me. And I was always consistent, but I never made like that big jump that I know I should have, and stuff. And I think again, part of it, a coach can only do so much. Part of it was me, but it was also the fact that I had two coaches in 4 years, and that's not good, really. Like you can't a coach, speaking as a coach as well, they can't develop their system because they're not there that long. So and the other thing is like they don't get to know you. They don't really get to spend time like developing you the way they want you to. So that's one thing. The other thing is like you as the athlete can't get, I don't want to say, yeah, they can't get used to the system that you're in. So an example of this would be like when Christian Che, for example, left Gerd Cantor. He had all the success, and then he had like 1 or 2 years when he like switched coaches, getting used to the system. He had 1 or 2 years where he's just like he's not the Christian Che we knew and loved. But now, like this year, 2025, he's starting popping off again, and I think it's because he started getting used to the new system that his new coach has developed. All right, So it takes a while it takes like a year or two for you to get comfortable in the new coach's system and stuff. So when you just start getting comfortable and then you get a brand new coach, you start getting a lot of varying opinions. Your technique changes wildly. Like one coach might want you to stay super upright. One coach might want you to be super bent over out the back. One coach in hammer might tell you to like go up and down with your right foot. One might tell you not to do that. And these are like big changes, big technical changes. And I'm not even saying that they're right or wrong, because depending on the athlete, it could be right or it could be wrong. But the fact is, like, you don't have a consistent person there holding down the fort. All right, and that leads to inconsistency with you, which leads to mental fatigue, because you're like, well, why am I not improving? And like, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. So when you just have like one coach there for your entire career, it just makes everything a lot smoother. They have a well-oiled machine. They have established hopefully a system and a environment of winning culture, of culture that you want to be a part of and stuff. So that's a big thing. Is the pro is consistency. All right. Another pro with staying with your coach is that you and your coach develop a bond where, it's very unique to you guys. So, for example, like, if you get a new coach and you've been working with this coach, so say you've been working with a coach for like 10 years or so, and then suddenly, like, something happens, the coach retires, you guys have a falling out, and you go find another coach. You as the athlete have been working with this coach, and say you've had success, all right, first of all. Say you've had success. You've been working with this coach for like 10 years or whatever, and you've like won a bunch, you've thrown it really far and stuff, and, you guys have a falling out, or you guys, like, the coach retires, or something happens, whatever. A thing that could happen is with this new coach, again, you don't know this person, or maybe you do. Maybe it's like a coach that you've ran into a bunch and that you respect. I would assume that you would go to a coach that you would respect and want to be coached from, hopefully. But then you come to find out, maybe the pastures aren't greener on the other side. I think that's the same. Whatever. And you find out, hey, this coach in particular, the reason he's had success is that he's just had a really, like, grade A, like, top 1% athletes, and it turns out their style doesn't fit you, or you find out that maybe they just don't know a lot and they just had really good athletes. That happens a lot more than you would expect. And again, that's not denigrating any coach or anything, but again, that's not the intent of this video. This is just a scenario. All right? And then you're like, oh, wow, I really miss my coach. But then you're like, well, I can't go back to the coach I had before. So that's another thing to consider, is sometimes having a new coach isn't necessarily a good thing. All right? Now, there's a other side to that, but we'll get to that in the negatives and stuff. So, yeah, those are two really big positives, and they're really, really big difference makers. All right, so when you are considering, if you are ever considering on leaving your coach, I want you to really, really think about it for a minute. All right, now obviously, if you just don't like the coach as like a person, or like you just don't like him, I mean, I'll find another coach, because then what's the point in staying with a coach that you don't like? Like, seriously, just do not like. Don't respect, especially if the coach doesn't like you back, and it's just a toxic relationship. It doesn't matter the success, because at the end of the day, like, have fun with your sport. It's not going to last forever. All right? So you might as well have fun doing it, and you got to have fun people around you. So if you have a coach that isn't making the environment fun for you, isn't like doing a whole bunch of stuff good for you and stuff, then I'm not going to say leave them, but I mean, that's a warrant to leave a coach, in my opinion, at least. So that's one big thing. So, yeah, let's get into the negatives. So, the negatives of staying with your coach. It can become stale. If you have a coach for like 10 plus years or so, and whatever, it might be better just to see a different point of view. If like you've just run like, it's just run its course. It's like, I've tapped this coach for all they have in terms of knowledge, and like, you feel as if like, you might want to see what else is out there if there's a different viewpoint. All right. So an example of this would be like Gerd Kanter leaving Weston Hysen. Gerd Kanter, one of the greatest discus, in my opinion, the greatest discus thrower of all time, and coached by the greatest discus coach of all time. And he left him towards the end of his career. They had they didn't have a falling out or anything. It's just Gerd Kanter wanted to see what else is out there. It's the end of his career. He just wanted to see. And, he was old and he didn't really throw as far. Like, he wasn't the Gerd Kanter we all knew and loved. But, like, sometimes it's just nice to see what else is out there. Coaches change all the time and stuff. And sometimes it's not even bad reasons. It's simply just because the athlete wants to just see that there's a different coach out there that works. So that usually happens when they're like, I've had so much success, and they've reached like a point where like they're not getting worse, but they're not getting better, and it's been like a couple of years, and they're like, maybe this other coach can push me back and just get the staleness out, the monotony of having another coach. And I know it sounds mean, but if you have a coach for like your whole career, just one coach, sometimes like most of the time that's a really good thing, but sometimes athletes need other options. So that's a negative, is it can become stale sometimes. All right, and sometimes it's on you, sometimes it's on the coach, sometimes it's just both. But yeah, that's something to consider. Another negative is staying with your coach is, again, if they're just a bad coach, or you just don't like them, or you think they're a bad coach, then, and if you're just not having fun, or they've developed like a environment and system that, one, is getting you hurt all the time, two, that you just don't fundamentally agree with, then nobody wants to stay in that environment. The coach doesn't want you to stay in that environment because you're just bringing down the rest of the team and stuff, because you guys are just fighting all the time. And honestly, like, for me, if I had an athlete, luckily I haven't run into this, but if I have an athlete that just constantly argues with me, just doesn't respect me, just like doesn't do anything I say and stuff, me personally as a coach, I wouldn't want that athlete there, and I'm sure they don't want to be there either. They just don't want to leave because maybe they're on scholarship, or they know they can't go to other schools and stuff, but nobody wants to be in that environment. So that is a negative. Obviously, like, especially if they're just like even if they're a bad coach, they could be a great person and stuff, and maybe your goal is just not to like throw far, not to throw like the furthest you can, and just be part of like a team, you want some friends and stuff. And sometimes if the coach just isn't like that good of a coach, but they're a super good person, and you like their vibes and stuff, I mean, that's cool too. Me personally, I cannot stand that. But but yeah, some people, again, people aren't me. I'm not other people. Everyone has different goals they want to get out of throwing and just sports in general. So that's very important. So those are really the biggest ones, I could say. Sorry about the fan noise too, but it just gets so hot in here if I don't have that on, so I do apologize. Let's get to the pros and cons of leaving your coach. So, the pros of leaving your coach is maybe you upgrade a coach, or you think you upgrade a coach in your mind. In terms of, maybe you had a subpar coach in your mind, or maybe he or she was just a subpar coach, and you upgrade say like you go from high school, or no, you go to like a D3 college, and suddenly you get the opportunity to work with like Brian Bluetrick or something, or like Art Venegas or like Don Babbitt or something. You just get an upgrade, and like your whole world just changes and stuff. Hopefully for the better. Changes are with those coaches for the better. Then that's a big positive. Is that maybe you find maybe you thought you had a good situation, but then this other coach completely changes your world and just opens up new doors for you, just changes your technique for the better and stuff. And it might take a couple years for that coach to implement those and you to actually do them and like get used to his system or her system and stuff. It's not a night and day thing. Like, you can't just go from one coach to the other and then like in one day that you suddenly just start going from like 60 to 70 meters in discus or something. Like, that never happens. It takes a couple years. All right. So that's another thing to consider too, is that, okay, we'll get to that in the negatives. But so, the first positive of leaving your coach is maybe you just upgrade coaches and you just have a better situation. Two, you have a new environment. Maybe you have new teammates that you like more than your other ones. Maybe they just have better equipment than you did, better just everything. Or you just like the vibes of the environment better. You just like the vibes of the coach better. And you yourself are just happier. That's a big positive. And then like three of a positive of leaving your coach for a new one is just breaking up the monotony, looking forward to something new instead of just like staying stagnant the entire time. Not saying that will happen if you stay or leave your coach, but these are just some pros to consider. That sometimes the pastures are greener on the other side, and it's just nice to break up the things you've been doing for years and years and years. So the negatives of leaving your coach: not consistent, or taking a couple years to get used to the new system. So say you're like a junior in college. You have one more year left, or you could redshirt, and then but it usually takes 1 to 2 years to get used to a new coach's system. So if you don't have the time to get used to that system, that's a bad thing, and you should really consider that. And yeah, also another negative is maybe you don't like the other coach and you actually miss your other coach that you had before, and you don't like your new coach. Or you thought you didn't like your old coach, and then you found one that's worse in your opinion to you, but you didn't realize it because you've heard good things about this coach, but then you found out you don't like this coach. That's a big negative, and that happens quite a lot. So I like to think of choosing coach first, just like I recruit athletes, and the first thing I look for is personality, and then the second thing I look for is resume. All right, but the first thing and foremost is their personality. If they just have a bad personality, or you just don't like them, then you're just never gonna like them as a coach, which means that you're never gonna get used to their system because you're gonna constantly be going back and forth with them. You're not gonna want to try the things that they're telling you. So what's the point of even being there? You're just wasting people's time. All right, so go to a coach that you know for sure you're gonna like. Maybe try and sit in on a couple practices and see how the coach actually treats their athletes at a practice. Ask the athletes that the coach coaches what they think and stuff. And it's also good information when you're on like recruiting visits and stuff. Ask the athletes. They're going to be a lot more truthful than the actual coach. All right. Coaches, when they recruit people, they're not going to be, mean or, bully the people that they want at the school. They're going to put on a face. and stuff. So it's very important that you ask the athletes and stuff what they actually think about the coach. All right, and then you look at the coach's resume, and stuff, and if you like both things, and go to that school, go to that college. But sometimes the coach, when they want you to be their athlete, they'll lie, they'll put on faces and stuff. And again, I'm not accusing any coaches, but when you actually get to be coached by that coach, their personality completely changes when you first met them, and you find out, oh, I don't like this person at all. All right, so this is a big thing to consider. Is sometimes the pastures are not greener on the other side. Sometimes they are. Most of the time they're not. All right, so my recommendation for this whole video is, if you have a coach that you like, stick it out for as long as you can. Develop a bond. That coach will get to know your body a lot and can figure out things like the way you move, how you lift, what weights you respond to in the weight room, your peaking cycle. It's a whole thing. So that coach gets to know you very well. You get to know your coach very well. And it's a special bond between a coach and an athlete, all right? And if you just have a coach like every other year, you're never going to develop a bond. You're going to be super inconsistent in your techniques. And, you might develop bad habits that stick with you forever. I still have bad habits that I've picked up for many years, and will probably have for the rest of my life, because of just one coach and literally just a week of practice, and I could never break a bad habit that I had, that I still have to this day. So it doesn't take much to develop a bad habit, but it takes a lot to get rid of a bad habit, and so these are all things to consider. Again, the point of this video is to caution and also make aware to the the public and stuff, like all these athletes, this subject, because it doesn't really get talked about much, and I don't think a lot of athletes actually consider when they leave their coach, or if they want to leave their coach, they don't consider all these things. They just like, oh, I don't like this person, but then they don't do research.